Okay. So you can see my screen. Okay, you can see my screen now. We just started recording. Okay, so everybody that's arrived, 45 out of you from all over the world, thank you very much for downloading and becoming part of this webinar. We've done a few of these actually. Really the objective, I guess, is to share insight and information, have discussions around developments of industrial print technology, which clearly is a very interesting, dynamic, innovative technology space. Obviously, a very big question we're asking here: what is the future of industrial print? With a specific focus on inkjet. So what I'm going to do is, you can see my screen okay. I can see there's some questions coming up which we'll ask later on. So that's roughly the outline. Big picture first. We're going to tackle manufacturing change because I think that's one of the key drivers. Then we're going to go into sort of decor, into packaging, which hopefully at which point Paul will join us. But I think we can talk about it in any case. Packaging is a segment, so I've chunked it into 4 segments. What is a very big church in terms of the scale and size of the market. The 3 sections are packaging, decor, function and future. And then hopefully if Mike joins us at the end, we can just go through some closing thoughts and also then talk about the Imprint Forum and the inkjet showcase. So Tim, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Great. And you can see my slides okay, yeah? Just
yeah.
Cool. Obviously, I'm the host, and I'm running the Imprint Show. Hopefully joining us, as well as Tim Phillips from Xenia, Paul Jenkins at the PackUp, Mark Ritchie at Czar, and Mike Willis at IMI. I'm the co-founder of the Imprint Show. We think it's now the fastest growing print technology event in Europe. It's running in Munich in November, 10th to the 12th this year. But before that, we're running an Imprint Forum, June the 24th, which is sponsored by Czar. As I said, 50% growth. We think it's the fastest growing event in this sector. I think over 90% of the space is now booked and over 60 new exhibitors. So it's I don't think I've ever worked on a show that's grown as quickly as this. I think that's indicative really of the interest, the drivers of the market, and perhaps where the manufacturing industry is going. Industrial print, we don't want to get bogged down in defining it, but in essence, we use this picture. In essence, we believe it is print that is part of the process of manufacturing. It could be functional printing, it could be decorative printing, and it could be printing that's involved with packaging. So nothing to do with paper printing really in terms of traditional commercial print or graphic printing. Just a little bit about the big picture now, and I think what is definitely impacting really from the top down is there are push and pull factors that are perhaps making imprint and industrial print in particular a particularly dynamic innovation space. Just rewind to 1955. I think this is a useful slide to really sort of think about. Actually, when you think about mainstream, in 55, behaviours were tightly grouped. I think you've got a really sort of very clear, distinct post-industrial structure. People that sit outside of that mainstream are very small in number and very noticeable, the people that behave outside of it. You will fast forward to 1975, you're starting to see more of a fragmentation. You know, things like punk rockers and hippies and on the one side, and then you have the kind of the advent of the computer nerd and so on, and the other intellectuals. But the mainstream is still dominant. And I think actually now, if you look at 2015, you've really got a mainstream or a normal space that is really sort of outmatched to some extent by the others. So society is fragmented, with it and technologies, I guess, assisted that. Then a new normal really is a system that is where distribution and self-expression is normal, and individuality and everything else. And I do think these big factors are playing a role in our space in industrial printing. And this leads on to the long tail. And I think that is a key digital value, something that's highly valuable for digital, is that the long tail principle is that the niches and all of the products that are particularly focused on niche, if you think of things like Amazon and how you can order what you want when you want it, are very specifically ordered and tailored to your taste, now outweighs, I guess, the mainstream popularity products. I think if you're thinking of inkjet and digital, it's that's an exciting fact. And don't forget, let's be honest, the people that we are going to be selling to in the future are, and have been, are millennials or whatever, but digital natives, people that are fully immersed in digital and know nothing else. They haven't lived through an analog period. They are different in thinking and behavior to us. And I guess the challenge for anybody making products is to stay relevant and inspiring for them. And I think that's another key factor as to why digital and inkjet and industrial printing in the future will continue to be particularly exciting. I'm going to just before I hand over to Tim here, really, but let's not forget that actually the recession has placed manufacturing in a greater, I guess, importance level. And we can all, particularly in Europe, look jealously at the German economy and their strong manufacturing base. It's proven pretty much that the robust performance of Germany throughout the recession is due to their strong manufacturing. And then if you look forward now this year at the Hannover Messe, Angela Merkel announced the Industry 4.0, which again I think is really, again, another thing for industrial print is really important. Industry 4.0 it talks about the next stage of manufacturing where it's fully integrated with IT systems and software and becomes more automated, more flexible, and all these things. So I actually think all these sort of things are really important. I'm now going to introduce Tim, because at this point, Tim, I know you introduced me to this slide, so I'd like you to sort of perhaps take the mantle from here and sort of explain a bit about manufacturing change and what this perhaps means.
Okay, so the idea of this is to show a shift in the way in which manufacturing is working from the sort of 20th century model to the 21st century model. So in the top half of this slide, the current model, really is still the way most manufacturing works, is mass production. Things are produced in very large numbers, essentially all the same. They're often manufactured in remote locations where there is lower cost labour, so then they're transported long distances by ship or by air, and then distributed in very large numbers into mass retail locations, and then sold to consumers. And the idea of this is that the companies decide what they're going to sell to people. Because they've made them in such large numbers, they need to sell them in very large numbers. So you need to then do a lot of advertising and convincing people that the things that they've made are the things that you want to buy.
Yeah.
And obviously this is a model that has worked extremely successfully over the last 100 years, pretty much. As Marcus was saying, because people are becoming more fragmented in what they want, they want more of a say in the products that are in their homes and in other places around them. So we're obviously seeing a progression towards a model which is much more led by the individual. Mm-hmm. So you have a situation where individuals are choosing the products that they want, and that's meaning that people are having to respond to that and change their logistics in order to allow that demand to be met. We're a long way from the model at the bottom there, but certainly in the next 20 or 30 years we'd expect manufacturing to turn a lot more towards this, where products are made on demand, and they're made much more locally to the people that want them, so that you have a situation where you don't have large mass production factories, you don't have large amounts of stock of identical products distributed around the world, but you have much more individualized products made for people as and when they want them. And clearly the reason why this is interesting for people in this audience is that digital manufacturing, so being able to define designs, but also structures and also coatings and surfaces and things like that, is a type of technology that feeds in brilliantly into this type of model, because it allows you to define ultimately whole products digitally and manufacture them.
Yeah. And you mentioned a couple of things there which I think are interesting. Obviously, it enables a number of things, isn't it? So we talk about digital print, but a couple of things. Speed. Speed is obviously, you think of digital natives and people, how people respond to things and so on. Mm-hmm. To what extent is speed a key factor?
Well, I think speed in terms of speed from somebody conceiving the desire for a product to somebody receiving that product in their home is extremely important. People, less are inclined to want to go off to visit, let's say, a big store like IKEA to buy their furniture, spend all day looking around it, then wait for 2 weeks for their particular wardrobe or whatever it might be to be delivered. That impatience that you sort of see as one of the trends that you mentioned earlier means that people are much more expecting that at 8 p.m. one evening they can be browsing on a website, see something they like, order it, and get it the next day. And so obviously, if you don't hold stocks of things like that, then manufacturing things on demand, speed is the thing that will make the difference to people.
Yeah, I saw recently at Amazon looking at drones as a method for delivery, which sounds interesting, but how they'd manage that, I don't know. But that, again, that's sort of anything that improves speed and response to customers and so on. And actually, when you think of packaging, we're talking about Amazon, but that how's that going to impact on retail and how things are packaged? Does it mean that things are packaged in a way that is less sophisticated, or perhaps it means that it has to be more sophisticated? I don't know, but it's that utilizing digital within that, you would think, would become a key factor, wouldn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Because you just simply can't use analog and respond at the speed necessary.
No, and also obviously that doesn't give you the ability to define things on demand. So the traditional analog way of defining patterns in the broader sense works brilliantly with the 20th century model. If you want to produce the same thing over and over again, traditional printing and deposition methods are absolutely perfect for that. They do it fantastically well. But they aren't appropriate for the defining something and printing it in one go model, whereas obviously digital printing and deposition methods are ideal for that.
Yeah, and because therein lies exactly the key, isn't it? That the 20th century mass thing. Now we're in the age of, I keep using this word, but self-expression, aren't we? Where we're wanting products very quickly, but we want them to be, I don't know, sort of individualized, not necessarily personalized, but that say something about us. So we don't want to buy mass produce stuff all of the time, but we do want something that says a little bit about who we are. And I think you would imagine that just increases the kind of, as the younger become more. Hello, Mike. So Mike's had a technology challenge and he's still smiling. Welcome. So yeah, we're still at this sort of formative stage, but anyway, we're just talking about how things have changed, and also the fact that manufacturing is structurally to some extent changing, albeit that perhaps in different industries quicker than others. But the fact is, speed being something that digital has that perhaps the other systems don't have, or the other printing technologies do not have.
So I think a point that you made there is a very good one, that a lot of people talk about personalization for digital, and in a lot of cases, yes, yes, some people want, mugs with their names on, but people don't necessarily want their names and pictures of their children over every product that they have.
No.
But what they do want to be able to do is choose something that won't be from the same 5 or 6 designs that everyone else has to buy. So and I'll touch on this again later in the sort of decoration section, but that is something that's very key, that it's not necessarily just about printing one-offs for individuals who want to design their own products, but it's about allowing people to have access to a much broader range of designs and more challenging designs potentially that the traditional model just doesn't let you have.
Yeah, Mike, I mean, we touched on packaging a little because we're going to be talking about that, but that with the growth of things like online, maybe packaging will change to become, maybe, I don't know, even less sophisticated and more functional. I don't know if that would make a difference. People at Amazon, you would think they use that actually the opportunities for personalization are strong, but as Tim's just said, actually perhaps the big advantage going forward, or the big opportunity, is mass customization.
And Marcus, just so you know, I've dialed in by phone.
Brilliant.
Paul Jenkins.
Welcome, Paul. Paul's had a challenge this morning
Sorry
as well.
about
I don't know. Yeah, it's funny. Mike's had a problem. Don't worry, it's fine. We started and hoped you would join us before your bit, and you've got in there. No problem.
Okay, good.
I think, Marcus, the problem may be that you've reached the limit of attendees, which is why we couldn't get in.
Do you think? The attendees limit is 100.
Yeah, it says 57 out of 101. But,
okay. Maybe that wasn't the problem.
Because I had checked that before, and it says you can have, anyway, 1,000 registered and 100 in. But anyway, who knows? It could be something to do with that. So yeah, so it's pretty accepted that this change is happening, isn't it? Another thing about manufacturing changing is it just a nice story, this reshoring thing, or is that reshoring thing actually happening? We talk about Tim.
I'd say to a certain extent it's a nice story, but the one concrete example that we know and we see this happening very definitely is in apparel textile printing, where a very significant amount of the apparel textiles that are in stores in Europe are printed in Europe or close to Europe, North Africa. Whereas the traditional model, again, would expect that kind of stuff would be printed in those remote, low-cost locations. Now, a significant fraction of it still is, but you can't do the thing that a lot of the stores are doing of having new designs in the shops every week or every few weeks if the designs are on a boat for a month. So yeah, there is a very significant and growing amount of textiles being printed digitally and being printed digitally close to where they're being used.
Yeah, Mike, have you had any other examples here? Touched on textile. Have you had any other examples?
Certainly, textile is at the moment is the fashion industry that is the fastest moving.
Yeah.
But it does enable a lot of manufacturers in a wide range of industries where responding to the market is important. I mean, take the ceramic tile business.
Yeah.
When new ranges are launched, then the interest in different designs, colorways, or whatever may be completely unpredictable. And with flexible manufacturing that you can get with digital printing, then you can respond much quicker to that demand than what the ceramic tile industry used to do, which was to print huge quantities for stock, every sort of other year or whatever. So the same thing can apply to a lot of the decor industry that we're talking about. And of course the same will apply to packaging as well at some stage, because when new food products or whatever are launched, then again the demand is never certain for anything in this world. There have been quite a few consumer products launched which haven't taken off, and again you can adapt to these.
It's interesting. So in the next slide, which is actually also a Tim's slide that I use, which I think is an interesting one. Just building on what you were saying there, sometimes things don't take off, sometimes they do. This is a good slide for sort of charting perhaps where things are, aren't they? Tim, explain this sort of the principle of the chart and what the chasm is and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so the idea of this is it's the traditional technology or product life cycle model, but Gordon Moore in 2000 talked about technology adoption specifically, and this concept of the chasm where it was relatively easy to sell new technology to innovators and early adopters, people that were prepared to spend many hundreds of pounds on the latest type of music playing technology or whatever it might be. But in order to ultimately make money out of that kind of technology, you have to sell it to the majority of consumers. And in some cases, technologies, laser discs was an example from years ago, and there are others as well, where that technology didn't get past those early adopters who always wanted to have the latest thing in their homes, and that's therefore fell into that chasm and never got to being sold to the majority. So what this is doing is taking that kind of model and taking it to look at digital printing across a range of applications, some of which we've already mentioned and some of which we'll mention later. So in this model, therefore, you've got wide format graphics, which has been around for many years. Essentially, everybody is using it that is likely to be using it. So it's a late majority type application and is a essentially zero growth application as well. The next one is ceramics, where it's almost exactly on the top of that curve. Just over 50% of ceramic tile printing, at least, is done using digital technology. So clearly that's been a very successful adoption, and that's now turning from being like a growth industry to being a later stage industry where most people are focused on price rather than anything innovative. The next one, which we've already mentioned, apparel textiles, which is very much in the middle of this growth phase at the moment, very rapid growth, and again, typically what you see is a lot of people that weren't in this industry suddenly becoming very interested about it and coming on board. And then you have some of the packaging ones, which I'm sure Paul will talk about. And earlier stage things like textiles for interiors and furnishing applications, so laminate printing and wall covering printing and things like that, which are still very much in the early adopter phase. And the question is, are there anything standing in the way which will mean that they fall into the chasm, or vice versa, actually be adopted in a large way?
And I think it's a really practical way of looking at how things are developing. And the question at the bottom of to what extent are conditions a factor in adoption? So it's not necessarily that the technology is good, bad, or indifferent, but actually the prevailing conditions make a difference. And you've already mentioned ceramics. I think it's a great case study, isn't it, of where conditions just suddenly were right and it tipped really quickly, and we're all sitting there trying to say, what is the future, what's the next one? And nobody really predicted the ceramics one, did they?
No, a lot of people didn't. And the answer is that yes, technology is a factor. If the technology isn't ready to deliver what that application requires, then that will stand in the way. But other things can stand in the way as well. In some cases, the people working in the technology, like ourselves, think you've got a great solution to the problem. But if the people using it don't think it's great and doesn't meet their requirement, then it won't be adopted. The other one is communication. If people don't understand the benefits of what the technology is, then it also won't be adopted. And market factors, as you rightly say, if the will isn't there in the industry to invest in something new for whatever reason, lack of resources or lack of imagination, conservatism, that kind of thing, then that will also stand in the way.
That is a thing, isn't it? Sort of like we've already said, fashion's rocking, but then you'd think, well, actually they're very responsive, creative industry, very close to consumers, and that makes sense. But then you look at other markets, perhaps that might not less be so kind of, I don't know, creative, that maybe are not either as open-minded, or they're structured around, it's been over the years been structured so much about cost minimization and quality that actually taking on a new technology is just too much for them, doesn't match their culture. Question for you both, actually, Mike. To what extent, actually, if you look at graphics, did a new community of business entrepreneurs spring up to fulfill a gap that was, because to what extent is that a factor that needs to happen, perhaps, for some of these more conservative industries to change?
Yeah, well, that certainly was the case. The early days of wide format graphics was really strange. I mean, at our conferences, we used to debate what on earth the applications for wide format graphics were, because in the early days there were machines and nobody could think what you might be able to print on them. Once everything began to take off, you used to get examples of people like HP going into these small entrepreneurial shops where they were adopting wide format, and the HP guys would go in wearing suits, and into guys wearing t-shirts and jeans. There was a complete mismatch of what they expected there. HP, we used to dealing with enterprises and so on.
Yeah,
and
so that's the challenge for them to adapt. And
absolutely, it did mean that some of the other early manufacturers were able to get in there with a much closer affinity to what people were trying to do. So there's some very strange things that happen. It took quite a long time for the wide format graphics market to mature into to what we see today.
It took a while, and it took a shift in sort of attitude, but also a new community of people showing that it's possible.
It was very entrepreneurial, and taking a different technology back in the early days of digital presses with Indigo and Zycon. Again, although there were some very large companies, print companies, who looked and bought one or two machines, there were a lot of very small companies who bought these machines. They were taking a very entrepreneurial approach to the adoption of that technology. And we at the time ran a digital presses course to help people understand what they could do with them, and the fact that it was no good sort of using job cards as they had with conventional presses, and quite a few of the people were very small companies who bought the machine and came on the course to find out what they could sell on the machines. It's a very odd situation. I think that with most of the other applications that we're seeing here, it's a much more mature approach. You need to have quite a large company to buy some of the big machines for textile printing, corrugators, and so on. But we're seeing a lot of that entrepreneurial spirit in the 3D printing area, I think, with these sort of 3D printing cafes and the like turning up, addressing the...
You wouldn't call that industrial, though, would you?
Market. It's not really an industrial level.
Before we move off, because I like this bit anyway, but before we move, you mentioned 3D printing, and I charted I've split between 3D printing, advanced manufacturing, and I've kind of cheekily put that over on the on the other side of the chasm, because I do feel that I don't know what you think, I do feel it is being used as a specialist technology in industrial manufacturing, isn't it?
It's used in a wide range of industries, from the dental, medical areas. It's in manufacturing, for castings, for prototyping. It is a serious technology that's going on. What the media sees, they do see a little bit of that, but mostly they see the clever stuff
the quirky stuff. Yeah,
the
quirky stuff that they get excited about. So I then put 3D printing consumer. It's interesting you mentioned that. We're starting to see maybe a set of businesses providing consumers with printing, a bit like you did perhaps with the wide format market. But my view, if you were charting that on it, it's not really a let's have a 3D printer at home and it's just going to be like having a normal printer and we'll all be printing stuff off. It's not really found its place yet, has it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I made a bid to have a 3D printer at home about 18 months ago, and it didn't pass the wife test. And the question asked was, what would you use it for? And I mean, there is no answer at the moment. There is no.
It was a good question to ask, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I should have been ready for it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of new technologies, we don't know what we can. Yeah, just like a lot of technologies, you don't actually know what you'll use it for until you try it. You know, like the smartphones and texting and that. Nobody could ever imagine that you'd be using the phones in the way you do. So I guess that's a little bit like that, potentially for 3D printing. That if it does get more mass adoption, it's a chicken and the egg, though, isn't it? How do you get mass adoption if people don't know what it's for? Yeah, that's a difficult one.
Yeah,
it is a bit like that. And I know, so you mentioned there about smartphones. Steve Jobs famously said that he didn't think apps would work. He didn't think there was a market in apps. So yeah, you just it takes users, I think, doesn't it, sometimes to go off and be creative and do stuff that you could never have predicted would happen. The whole market changes, the technology moves with it, and then all of a sudden it's doing something that you would never have thought possible. So 3D printing and a consumer technology, I didn't put anywhere. I wasn't sure if it's still. I think probably before the chasm, isn't it? Really.
It's right at the bottom of the little blue bit, but yeah, at the moment I think. Yeah.
Still in the innovator bit.
Yeah.
It's waiting for the killer application.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, maybe we'll come back to this, but I want to sort of moving on now. And Paul, who unfortunately I've got a picture of him there, so we've got his voice in the picture, but he can get onto camera to work. He's very cleverly emailed me his presentation, so I was going to hand it over to him, and obviously I can't do that. But anyway, so there's a nice picture of Paul, and what I'm going to do is actually get into my email very quickly.
Okay.
So I get to your. Perhaps you can introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the PackUp whilst I'll get.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The PackUp is a packaging innovation business. We help brand owners, packaging suppliers, and retailers with a whole host of packaging innovation projects right from the very start, which is about insight, understanding the problem, consumer research, workshops, that kind of thing, through to helping implement projects to eventually end up on supermarket shelves. So that's So we help a raft of people. We've been in business about 3 years, and that's the PackUp, UK based.
And UK based, but obviously what I like about the PackUp is very much about community, isn't it? So you approach things from providing a lot of insight, reports, presentations, networking, and all of that, don't you?
Yes, we do. And we have a weekly innovation zone newsletter, which basically summarises the latest packaging innovations, which is a free service, and that just ensures that we're up on our toes. In terms of understanding what the latest packaging innovations are, and also obviously hopefully it's all value to the people we send it to as well.
And what we talked about earlier was the changing kind of consumer space, the fact that we've got a whole group of people coming up that are fully digital in terms of the millennials, whatever. So I think your business really is that nice intersection between technology and brands. So can you see the slides? Can you see your slide?
Yeah.
You can.
I can.
Okay, fine. So you've done your introduction. So I'll hand over to you. Next slide. Okay.
Yeah, but you're going to need to change the slides for me.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, if you go to the next. Yeah.
Next one.
Yeah. So obviously, my appreciation of things is around industrial, is around packaging. And have you changed to the next slide?
Yeah, I can change to the next one. Can you actually see? Yeah, you've got digital print as a part of the revolution at the top.
Right. All I can see is digital print for packaging, front slide. Oh, there we go. Brilliant.
Okay, it's a bit of a
That's
time
the third
lag.
slide. There should
Yeah.
be a second.
Okay, do you need me to go back one?
Please. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so all I wanted to do was just put a bit of context about where digital print sits in terms of current packaging trends. And at the PackUp, we've identified 6 trends that are shaping packaging innovation. So you've got on-the-go, added functionality, packaging that pleases, get noticed, and sustainability. But at number 4, made for me, is really where digital print comes into its own. So that's all. If you go to the next slide, please, Marcus. Yeah. Which is all about sort of pack versioning.
Yeah.
On to the next slide.
Yeah, I have. I'm on the digital print as part of the revolution at the top.
Right. Okay. I can't see that. Oh, so yeah, you've got things like pack versioning, the ability to do short runs, personalization. You know, so made for me is all about, and Marcus mentioned the millennials earlier. It's about this new generation of consumers that are completely comfortable and completely accepting that brands should communicate and impress them on a one-to-one basis almost. So digital allows brands to do personalization and various pack versionings in a really interesting and intriguing way. And the next few slides will give some examples of that. But what else digital print also does, as well as pack versioning, personalization, obviously, is short runs. It can also be done for things like test launching and prototyping. So in theory, you could go into one outlet with 50 packs to test a particular concept, a particular new pack format. And you know, the other side of the coin is the quality is now up there. Although we sometimes feel that brand owners aren't necessarily understanding that this is the case, but you know, the quality is good. It's good to engage with consumers, can make a point of difference, and can create a competitive advantage. So, Marcus, if you go to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
And I mentioned about just a nice picture of some teenagers using what they know best, which is laptops and tablets and iPhones and that. So they really are calling the shots in terms of driving the expectation that brands should be engaging rather than this sort of, you know, a Model T process of one product. There's the opportunity through digital for packaging to be modified and personalised almost on a one-to-one basis.
Okay.
If you go to the next slide, please. Yep. So I've just got 3 or 4 examples of where digital print has been, I believe, used really, really successfully. So this is obviously a Coca-Cola campaign.
Sorry, mate. Sorry.
That's it.
Yep.
Coca-Cola campaign in Israel just before Christmas. This was 2 million bottles, each one absolutely individually unique. They used an HP Mosaic software with 23 base designs, I think, and managed to manipulate that data so to ensure that each design is unique to the world. What I like particularly about this is that it brings the brand an offline product online, because there's a unique number on each one of those bottles. So you can go online and you can, if you so wish, get a T-shirt, a picture, a mug with your unique design on there. So that was only 2 million bottles, and just for the Israel market. But I would expect that similar activity from Coca-Cola in other markets at some point. I have no insider knowledge, obviously, but I would expect they were testing the water, and that ticks a lot of boxes for me.
Yeah.
The next one, please.
Yeah.
And of course, we all know about the share of Coke, which I think I've been to a number of sort of packaging conferences on digital print, and this is recognised and acknowledged as being the one activity that awakened brand owners to the opportunities that digital print can offer. I mean, this was a dual digital print alongside some analog print technology. Started off, I think, in Australasia a few years ago, and obviously has been rolled out to many markets, and they've adapted each market to the top 100 or 150 names in those markets. And they've now done things like Braille packs as well, and they really are testing their creativeness there. So I think that was a good example of a campaign that really woke people up to realising what could be done not just from a digital point of view, but what could also be done from so-called personalisation and pack versioning. So just to prove that I don't work for Coca Cola secretly, the next one is from Nutella. They're my 3 children, and I very kindly bought them a personalised jars of Nutella a few months ago from Selfridges in the UK. And I just really like this. There's a you pay a premium to line up with everyone else to get that personalised packs. My kids do happen to like Nutella, but obviously I ended up buying 3 jars, so that did increase consumption in the household. If you just go to the next slide, what I particularly like about this is the viral nature of this kind of thing. So my eldest daughter, and I didn't ask her to do this, although I did ask for the pictures afterwards. She's tweeted and put on various social media channels that anyone under 24 doesn't even know what they are. So that immediately she got that, she told the world, and that Nutella have obviously invested in making that happen. But there's an additional benefit from the viral effect that these things can have, and certainly the Coca-Cola Share a Coke campaign. I think if you do hashtag Share a Coke on Twitter, you'll still see plenty of postings from throughout the world. So there is obviously an opportunity for brands to stay in the consciousness through that viral activity. And I think I've just got one more that I'll focus on, because I appreciate how long it's taken.
That's right.
I really like this one. This is from the States, and this is not obviously personalisation. I don't know what you'd call something that is made for a dog. It's not personalisation, is it? It's canine. So this is Nestle. This is from Nestle Purina in the States, and what they've got here, as you can see, is what you do is you go online and you put in various details about your pet, picture, date of birth, general state of health, that kind of thing, and Nestle Purina come back with a blend that is so-called uniquely blended to that dog's dietary requirements. So not only is the product personalised, but the packaging, it says the name of the pet on the pack plus a picture. I think they could do a better job actually in terms of making that a bit more creative. But what a great idea from Nestle Purina to lock in shoppers. Once your pet obviously loves that product, they've got you locked in for the next 2 or 3 years. So this is on pet food. I would expect digital print to help enable that for other categories sometime going forward. I've just got 2 other examples very quickly to show that it doesn't have to be. There are other ways to sort of use digital, and this is a test in Tesco for Parmesan potatoes. Probably not the most exciting product people would ever purchase, but what consumers were able to do here was upload pictures of themselves for the chance for their picture to appear on pack. So the pack you buy isn't a picture of your family; it's a picture of someone else's family. So that's a little bit questionable. But I think they were just testing the fact this is so straightforward and so easy. So you could have 2 different families or 1,000 different families, 10,000 different families. Digital really does allow that to happen. I guess in theory you could even do that, by store if they. You
could, couldn't you? You could do it by region, couldn't you, or locale, and that'd be.
You could be football teams. There's so many different things you could do to engage consumers. And we're really at the very start of this. The Share a Coke campaign was mass market, obviously, around the world, but there's still so much opportunity for brand owners and retailers to take on the digital print mantle, I think, and draw it forward, bring it forward.
And is there another slide? Yes, Heinz.
One last slide, which, and this has been around for a while now, but Heinz recognised there's a connection between consuming soup and not feeling well. So what you do is go online, I think on Facebook, Sorry, not
I've
soup makes
taken
you feel
it
unwell,
the
but
wrong way.
yes, exactly. Soup is one of those kind of warm remedies from your childhood that you would have when you were, certainly when I was off school, I always used to have tomato soup. So this is an opportunity through Facebook, I think it was, for shoppers to buy a loved one, a jar of Heinz with a get well soon message, and that was sent to them, hopefully in time for them whilst they're still unwell. You have to get that out quickly, but just a nice little touch, very easy to do, and another example of the creative way that digital print can be used, to build brands and engage with consumers.
Yeah, it's clever, isn't it? And it's like you say, it's amazing. One of the things that strikes me is actually what it needs really is leadership, isn't it? It's that kind of...
Yes, and Coca taking that mantle, I guess, at the moment, but yeah.
But there are other examples like Heinz and where you can see it's being used. What I've been struck by in the past, listening to some brands talk about it, is they kind of like to say they're doing stuff, but they doesn't seem to be a huge amount of visible evidence of stuff happening. What stops people or brands giving it a go? Is it just the huge supply chains that they have and the huge volumes, and it's just too much for them?
I think one of the issues is a simple one, that the people coming up with the creative ideas within the brand team, the marketing people, they don't necessarily understand the opportunities that digital print can offer.
Yeah.
If you go to a digital print conference, it's full of people in the industry. It's not full of brand managers and creative people. So I think if you could get a room full of creative people, and in a meeting for an hour, they would come up with hundreds of ideas that you could then test the water with. I think one of the challenges is that brand managers are used to doing things the way they've done them. So that's advertising, direct marketing, social media, and perhaps there's a job the industry needs to do to further educate brand owners and creative people to say, brand managers and creative people to say, there are opportunities here. Do you realise that this is possible? And I think the share a Coke thing won't, alerted people to the opportunities, but I still think there's a long way to go.
Do you thanks for that, Paul. It's really interesting. Just what sort of question around it? But we talked earlier about the fact that in wide format, a whole bunch of companies set up to do the stuff in wide format. Might a similar thing happen in packaging? Because there are some similarities, aren't there, between point of sale and packaging. It's about persuasion, branding, and all that. I think, to be fair, wide format printing is much easier to do than packaging, to be fair. But do you think that might need to happen in order for things to take hold, really?
Possibly, yeah. I haven't considered that before, but that could be the one thing that gets things really moving. I mean, digital print for packaging is growing fast. It's just from a relatively
you mentioned yesterday
compared to analog.
Yeah. And also, one of our exhibitors, Tonejet, a really interesting story around craft drinks and the growth of craft drinks. That's becoming a significant market. The people that run those businesses are entrepreneurial. They don't have the massive supply, the massive structural problems with changing production, and so you might find that as markets change and develop, and things like localization and people wanting to buy different products and so on, actually the people that are producing these things don't have the same problems, maybe. So thanks for that, Paul, and I appreciate you really persisting with trying to join us. So it's I'm sure it's quite frustrating. I think there was basically an internet problem in the UK 15 minutes before we started, because 3 of you not been able to get on. Okay. There must have been some kind of issue. I really appreciate your persistence, so thank you. Mark Ritchie might be trying to come in. Not normal to have my email up at the same time, but I'll turn.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I can hear you, Marcus.
Brilliant. That sounds like Mark.
Yes.
Sounds like Mark. Welcome.
It's Mark Ritchie here.
Good. Well done,
Thank you.
Mark. You've come right at the right time. So what we're kind of taking longer than anyway. So we're only really at the design and decor, so you haven't really missed a huge amount, and people can stay on as long as we go, really, because we'll probably exceed the hour. So we've just done packaging. I'm going to hand over now to Tim for design and decor. Tim, would you like to take us through this, and I'll change the slides for you, so you just need to tell me when to change the slides.
Okay, so as quickly as possible off this slide and onto an interesting one. I'll try and be brief on this bit because I know we're taking some time. I touched on this earlier, but the key point is that ultimately people can talk about technology until they're blue in the face, but the thing which consumers buy are things that they think are pretty and will look nice in their homes. And so the key point is that there is absolutely no point developing technology that doesn't deliver something that people want. It's one of these obvious points that's often missed by people in the technology world. So the next point on here is that the kind of things that you can get using digital technology are things like personalization, like we've mentioned, but also things like creating natural effects. If you want to move on, Marcus. But, yeah. Things like color gradients, which are quite difficult to do with traditional printing. Things like varying the image, whether subtly or completely from object to object. This has been done in the ceramic tiles and was one of the key reasons for adopting digital. It can be done in other things as well. So you can potentially get away from the oh God, someone else is wearing my dress at the party. You can vary the print that's being printed. So even without changing the garment, if the design is changing over the however many thousand meters are printed, then you've already got a subtle change. That's something that you can do with digital that you just can't do with analog. And I think this is one again where the possibilities are essentially endless, and it's down to people to understand what the possibilities are and design them into their products.
Definitely.
And then so the technology enables the new trends, but they're coming from consumers ultimately.
Yeah, so it is a pull thing. It is a pull thing. You think with design, it's a pull thing that designers are always traditionally seen things happening before perhaps others, and able to adopt the technology to do things more quickly, maybe.
Yeah, so I think a key point of these couple of slides is that what's essential is for technologists to understand design, and for design to understand, for designers to understand technology, because those two things are enabling things in new ways that currently we can't do, but either of those two communities can't do it on their own. So if you go on to the next slide.
Yep.
So the key point here is that requires people to change the way they think, and we see quite a lot of examples of people finding it very difficult to change the way they think. We have people come to us saying, yeah, we want to do digital printing, and essentially what they say is, well, the reason why we want to do that is we want to do exactly what we do now, but either cheaper or faster or with less stock or something like that. So they're already missing certainly the point, but also a lot of the opportunity of digital printing, because what they already do is designed to work very well with traditional printing. So the designs that they print, the way that they print them, the way that they stock them, the way that they distribute them, are all designed to work with that traditional model that I put up earlier. And often it stands in the way. It is very much part of that chasm that if you want to do something exactly the same as you do now, but with digital, what you often find that digital can't actually do that as well as traditional technology. So people go away and think, oh, digital's not ready. And actually, whether it's ready or not is a slightly different question, because it clearly is ready to do lots of things. And by understanding the strengths of a technology and its weaknesses, you can do things which you can't do already.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So what you're saying is people see digital as a replacement, because it does replace in our smartphones and things like that. Who generally uses their analog phone these days, for instance? You might do a bit, but actually everybody's pretty much got a mobile phone. So actually it's digitization tends to mean replacement on a general level, but what you're saying is in industrial it shouldn't necessarily be like that.
Well, it's often thought of a replacement, but actually most of the examples, even down at a machine level, people aren't junking their old traditional machines and replacing them with digital machines. What they're doing is adding capability, and that really is, for me, the best way to do it. Analog printing is very good at certain things. Leave it doing those things that it's good at. Add the capability of being able to print digitally, understand the benefits of what that can do, and then use that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So design to the strengths of that technology and then around its weaknesses is a key thing.
Yeah.
Key point that you're making.
So if you add the next bit, so in a sense it's down to the people in the technology to help people like the brands and designers within the brands understand that although they may not think it, what they do is design designs that look good when they're printed with gravure or screen or whatever it might be. The designs that you would print, and obviously people in the graphics that print with digital know this, there are things which look good when printed digitally and there are things which don't look so good. And often they're completely different things from the things which look good when printed with gravure or screen. So that's where this interaction between design type people and technology type people is crucial.
Yeah, definitely.
And then on to the last of these three slides. The other point is that what design does is liberate designers. Sorry, I mean what digital print does is liberate designers. So if you don't have to make 1 million square meters of whatever design it might be in order to make money out of your print, what that does is change the way you think about design, because in that 20th century model, the designs that you print 1 million square meters of or make 1 million products of, whatever they might be, are by their nature conservative designs. They're designs which are intended to be applicable to the majority of people. So they're more designs around not offending anyone than around exciting anyone.
Yeah.
If you can change the way that you produce your designs or your products that incorporate those designs, what that does is mean that you can be much more out there in your designs, because you can be talking about making money from designs which only sell a few thousand copies or even less. So you can be much more creative. You can have designs which challenge a lot of people and which frankly most people wouldn't be seen dead with, but which certain other people will pay extra for because, finally, some designs which are innovative.
Yeah, and like going back to what we said before in terms of that kind of long tail, there's a design for everybody, isn't there?
That's right. And so again, for me, it's not necessarily about personalization in the sense that people think of it. You know, printing your name on a Coke bottle is what people think of as the classic sort of personalization. This is kind of personalization, but it's personalization for groupings. So it's people that want to have something that is much more individual, but it's still designed by a designer. Most people don't want to design their own garments or their own furniture and things like that at the end of the day. They still want designers to do it because that's what designers are for.
Yeah, and that's
a good example might be where the with the introduction many years ago now of virtually any color paint you want.
Yes.
You know, when I grew up, there was about 20 different colors you could buy. Now you can have every color under the rainbow, whatever you want to paint your room. What colors? A similar kind of thing can occur with colors and patterns for textiles.
Exactly, yeah, and that also, once the technology is there, can apply to furniture. It can apply to crockery and tableware. Almost everything you can imagine can have this diversification of design once the technology allows it.
And then obviously the ink's quite an important factor within all of this, isn't it? So that, you know, thinking of textiles and you know, well, for example, textiles, but yeah, things like dye sub, that process seems to have revolutionised an entire segment. That's in boom mode, isn't it? That's booming.
And what that does is, because the technology is much more accessible to somebody that doesn't already have a massive textile mill covering the size of half a town, Yeah, with a relatively small printer and a heat press, you can get into the textiles business essentially with die sub. What that does is allow those small entrepreneurial people to start being creative. And we've got some customers like that who are doing some really interesting things that a traditional textile mill just wouldn't dream of.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting. So you mentioned also high-end silk scarves, and there's all these different applications potentials. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really just an example where you get that quite good fit between diversification of design and the fact that costs were quite high initially with digital textiles, where the high-end silk scarves cost of print wasn't really an issue in the final price that people buy one of those scarves for, but having a fantastic design that you knew your friends and colleagues and people like that wouldn't have was the selling point. And that works quite well in the early stages when your costs are high, but it still work when that's not the case, because people will pay a premium for something that really completely hits their button in terms of a design.
Yeah, they'd rather pay more and have one than three of something they kind of half like.
Yeah, exactly. So and so what that does is it very much puts the designers in the driving seat.
Yeah, exciting. Thanks for that. That's so on a decor perspective, before we move on to function and future, from a decor perspective, you talked of textile and that moving, and we've mentioned ceramics already. What's the next chunk or the next segment within decor you think we're going to start seeing a bit more action in terms of inkjet and digital?
Well, I think they're the ones we've mentioned. Packaging is starting to see some interest, but it's still at an early stage. But there's huge potential there in all kinds of different packaging, which are all in a sense decorative applications. And then it's really the other kind of home furnishings in a general sense is where we see it. So soft furnishings, but also hard furnishings, wood laminates and flooring, wall coverings, all these sorts of things.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, thank you. So we're now going to, before you come back to Mike, I'm going to introduce Mark. Mark, you're still there, hopefully.
I am still here, Marcus, yes.
Thank you. Introduce Mark Ritchie, product manager for advanced manufacturing products within Xaar, who are headline sponsor for the Imprint Forum. And Mark's going to talk to us a little bit about the function and future, which you're heading. You're taking part. Obviously, you're presenting at the forum. So you just need to tell me to change the slides as and when, Mark. But by all means, introduce what it is you do for Xaar and take it away. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Right. Well, first of all, apologies on behalf of the British internet industry, which seems to have been playing complete havoc this morning at exactly the wrong time. So this is going to be interesting, doing a webinar by phone and completely blind. My role at Xaar, I'm product manager for the Xaar 1002 printhead. And my responsibilities for the different sectors is slightly wider than advanced manufacturing. It's a number of industrial areas, including decor, textile, although today we're not directly involved in that yet, as well as advanced manufacturing and direct-to-product printing. So it's a little wider, but what I'm going to be talking about, the print within IMI seminar is more to do with what we call advanced manufacturing. So we know that certainly in graphic printing, display printing, certainly inkjet has grown to become a real major printing method over the last 20 years or so, and I'm sure you've already heard about the inroads that are being made into other industrial areas. I think ceramics particularly is one that has turned, but functional applications are emerging, and this is what I'm talking about with advanced manufacturing. So it's where fluids are used in a functional rather than a decorative for a decorative purpose. Now, there are some challenges in this area, because today's inkjet printhead technology was actually conceived and designed for really printing text and graphics. So when you try and apply those to the demands of advanced manufacturing, it quite often requires quite a lot of compromise. Some of the things that have helped, and there are increasing numbers, is printheads that actually recirculate internally, because quite often you're using not only in single pass, which gives greater reliability, but you're quite often jetting high density particulated or pigmented fluids, and you need to keep those in circulation, otherwise you can have problems with deposition of some of the particles. The other challenge is that unlike inkjet graphic inks, which are relatively straightforward and generic and have had a lot of research and development effort put into them over years, is that the functional fluids are more complex. They've not only got to be jettable, they've got to deliver the functionality they needed as well. And this isn't always easy to achieve, especially when many of the projects we get involved in start with the question, can you jet this? And you're essentially handed a vial of goo. So the starting point for all these projects is the fluid, and they're formulated without consideration of an inkjet application. So it's only by working with all the parties involved that we can really expect to sort of accelerate the expansion of the advanced manufacturing aspect of inkjet. And I think next generation printheads and developments in fluids will help drive this.
Okay.
So, would you like to move on to the next slide, Marcus?
Okay.
Okay. So, just some examples of areas which are starting to move forward. On the left, you can see a photograph of a silicon chip. This is actually the world's first 450mm CMOS wafer, which is produced by Intel using SARS inkjet technology. The actual application of the inkjet here is to create complex resist layers in the production of silicon chips. And this is achieved by getting extremely close to the surface, because of course you can do that with wafers because they're mirror-like, but requires very small drops, less than 1 peak liter, very accurate placement. And this is starting to be used in the production of silicon wafers today. Let's see where the future goes. The second one in the middle is touch screens. Again, we're starting to see multi-layer inkjet printing solutions for touch screen and black matrix printing. And then on the third example is solar panels, where inkjet is being used to realize the front metallization on the solar cells. Now, when you use inkjet, you can actually gain cell efficiency. It's quite a small amount, 0.3%, but that's a significant gain compared to traditional screen printing techniques. Unfortunately, this market is a little depressed at the moment, so it's overall the solar cell, there's lots of overproduction, so we haven't seen a strong move to inkjet, but it looks like that could have a good future for a good future.
Can I just ask you a question actually on these three? So you mentioned touchscreen, obviously. So this is smartphone stuff.
Yeah.
That up to now is it printing, like you said, it's not necessarily ink. So is it actually printing the layers that would formerly have been done screen printing, or is it a different aspect of that?
Well, there are. It's the black matrix around the edge.
Ah, okay. So it's
the glass.
The white bit on my iPhone around the that white bit, that kind of thing. Is that what you mean?
Yes, it would be. Yeah. Well, it's normally the blacks around
to
the external part of the screen.
Okay.
Certainly not for the for the graphics or anything like that.
No. Okay.
That's all different technologies there, but.
Yeah, so actually it's starting to it's good enough quality to be able to do that, and to perhaps take a little bit of the screen printing function away. Is that right?
Yes, for some applications, that's absolutely right. And I think it's the key thing. I think with a lot of these, again, it's going back to the fluids and getting the fluids right for inkjet technology, which is the challenge, and also finding ways to put these into a proper production line.
And you mentioned,
like with all these things,
go on.
if you're going to implant something into a 24/7 production line, it has to be 100% reliable.
Yeah, has to be reliable. But you mentioned also single pass, which is the advent of single pass now gives the quality or the speed necessary. Is that what's important about single pass?
The key importance for single pass is the speed. It combines a suitable quality with speed. Now, with some applications, for example, the silicon wafer printing, that is actually multi-pass, because with a drop size that small, you would have to have a huge number of drops per inch on your printhead to be able to achieve the sufficient coverage.
Okay.
So it depends on the application.
It sounds, and as a layman, as it were, really, an observer more than anything, it sounds like this is the kind of really, really challenging part of inkjet's development. I mean, it must be at an earlier stage, would it, than others, or?
I would say it is at an earlier stage, and it's also an incredibly long cycle of collaboration. We've been working with some companies for up to 10 years, and still the projects have not gone into full commercialization. So it's a very, very long cycle.
Yeah, interesting. So you have another slide?
Yes, I have another slide. Yes, I was going to move on to one, because, of course, when we talk about, for me, advanced manufacturing, non-decorational fluids, then a big application which is non-decorational is 3D printing. Could you just hold on 1 second, please, Marcus?
Yep, no problem.
Yes, come on in. The webinar's still going on, so will you come on in now? Just excuse me. Sorry about that. I'm back.
Okay.
Yes, 3D printing, which of course is the sexy part of digital in many ways, and I've often wondered, is the actual capability of 3D printing in line with the noise that's being made about it? There's a lot of the Emperor's New Clothes type of thing about it, because all you hear about is people printing guns or houses or things like that. But in reality, this is actually a very big sector in the industrial area as well. And some numbers I saw quite recently, which I was quite surprised about, is actually the value of 3D printing is estimated to be worth $3.4 billion this year, and growing at over 25% a year. So it's a huge opportunity. Now, this diagram would be nice to be able to stand in front and point at, but so I'm going to have to.
You can tell me where to point.
Okay, I'll read that in a polite way. There are basically 7 recognized 3D printing technologies today, and a number of variants within them. And of those 7, there are 3 that rely on inkjet. And those 3, there's one called direct material jetting, and this is one which I'm sure most people will have seen, where you jet the material through a print head, normally some kind of thermoplastic material, and you build up your 3D object. The second one is binder jetting, where you actually jet a chemical binder onto either a powder or a sand bed, and the binder that you jet binds the granules together to form your object. And the third area is powder bed fusion, which is a more recent technology, and this uses what we call high-speed sintering processes. Now, if you look at the diagram, the volume levels for most of these technologies are low until you come to this high-speed sintering process, and you'll see the word factum, which covers high volumes as well. So I'll try and explain where that sits. This is a type of system where essentially you deposit, you've got a thin powder layer to start off with, and the inkjet deposits a radiation absorbing fluid onto it, which is the first part of the design. Then an IR lamp passes over it to irradiate the surface, and the heat from this IR lamp sinters the area where the fluid has been jetted. Then you pass another layer of powder over it, deposit some more fluid, IR lamp, and you repeat that process until you actually build up your 3D object. But the beauty of this system is that it can actually produce parts very quickly and at high volume. So you can actually make finger-sized parts at less than 1 second per part. So it's got the potential to produce very high volumes of product economically, and could be a replacement for small volumes of product that are CNC machined today, for example, or even a lot of injection molded parts. And you may have shown this slide already, and I was picking up on this point, that this is the kind of technology in 3D printing that could help to cross the chasm in industry from innovator to actually proper adoption.
Yeah, we looked at the chasm. We put 3D industrial printing at the beginning of the... We think it has actually crossed the chasm. It's definitely being used. It's just, like you said there, the volumes are quite low, and it's very specialist. But this could, like what you're saying, is actually you could elevate it into a higher volume, and with matching quality and high-speed sintering could be revolutionary, couldn't it?
It certainly could, yes. And I think it certainly crossed the chasm for low volume.
Yeah, low volume.
So for one-offs, two-offs, so modeling definitely, prototyping and bespoke and low volume manufacture. And there is some really interesting stuff not done with inkjet specifically in industry, but in the aerospace industry. The latest Airbus was recently announced that for the first model, the 787, I think it was, they have sorry, XWB, that's what it is, the Airbus XWB. So they've used over 1,000 3D printed parts in that aeroplane. And Rolls-Royce have also used 3D printing to produce a part on their Trent engine. This is a laser fusion of metals rather than inkjet, but still really interesting to see that kind of thing is being used in
it is,
really
and
important industry.
It is, and it produces. I read somewhere that you mentioned the Airbus. It reduces the weight something on the lines of a staggering amount because it's 3D printed. So it's providing kind of key performance advantages, isn't it?
It is, yes. Yes, it's a couple of things. It's the performance of the parts. Quite often brackets are often the kind of thing that's often used, but it's the weight of the parts, but also the fact that if you were to produce those in the relatively small numbers that you would on a single aircraft, they would be prohibitively expensive. So it's taking cost out as well.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, next slide.
Okay, the next slide. Yes, just a bit more about the Factum project, because this is one where Zara's involved. But this is relatively early stages, but this is a project, the high-speed sintering project, which has been supported both by the UK government, with part of their government that's called Innovate UK, and industry. So there's two prime targets for the technology that Factum is bringing in. It's high volume, low cost components, and low volume, high performance components. So the technology here is moving from potentially from small numbers into something that will be used in a proper high volume manufacturing environment. So it could be equally used in bespoke manufacturing, and as well as anything that's replacing injection molding, for example, depending on the design of the printer.
How do you see this developing? Because we've talked a lot about the communities of businesses starting up. Do you see that specialist 3D printing, industrial printing companies coming to the fore, as opposed to, yeah, it's always been already being used as a prototyping technology and so on, but yeah, will you get people like BMW suddenly having Factum in their systems, or will another company set up and provide Factum solutions for BMW?
Well, I can see it working in both directions. I can see that the bigger companies, and when you look at some of the names who are involved as partners in the project, like BAE Systems and Cobham Aerospace and Unilever, these are people who clearly are interested in developing this technology to a stage where they can use it in their processes. So I can see that they would be more likely to have a system like this under their own control. But at the same time, there would also be great opportunities for specialist 3D printers, as there are today, to supply small quantities or even larger quantities to smaller companies that don't have the know-how or the experience or the money to invest in the 3D printing facility.
That's interesting, but like you say, function is perhaps at an earlier stage of development, partly because the barriers to adoption might be quite considerable, and like you say, you're dealing with sort of very caustic substances, aren't you, and different substances, so on. But you know, gazing into the future, will it become a replacement technology, or do you see it being sitting alongside other technologies?
I think it will sit along technologies in the same way. I think it was Tim was talking about some of the current decorative industries. That when you get to certain volumes of some design types, then I think there will be the traditional methods could well be cheaper. I think it depends on the design, because with some complex designs, even when you're looking at injection molding, you have to build them up. If you can do it in one hit with a 3D printer, so a more complex geometrical shape using the Factum type process, it could be that would remain cheaper than injection molding, no matter what the volume is. But I still see that there will be standard, fairly straightforward injection molded type parts would still continue to be done that way in volume.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Mark. Mike or Tim, is anything you want to perhaps ask Mark or before we move on? No?
No.
No, okay.
Oh, right. Tim looks as though he was asking something that we couldn't hear.
Okay.
No, I think that's very clear. I think given time, we should perhaps move on.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm now going to make Mike a presenter. Are you ready for this, Mike?
Yeah. Let's give it a whirl.
Sorry about this, Andrew. Would you like a coffee?
Okay.
Okay. So you should be able to see my slide on screen now.
Yep, I can.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. I'm just going to quickly go through what's going on the week after next in Munich, where we have our industrial inkjet technology showcase. And I'm a bit worried now that I've brought the wrong presentation home, but let's see how that goes. Yeah. Okay. We're going to have industry overviews. We've got a lot of the key suppliers to the industry coming along. They'll be exhibiting their products. We have training as well. We have some inkjet tech talks. The first half a day is the Imprint Industrial Print Forum, and this is going to be run by Marcus, Fraser and Tim, and there are three sections, basically the three sections we've been talking about this morning on packaging, brand and retail, design and decor, and future technology. And there's a wide range of different speakers, from technologists right through to designers, who are going to talk about what is going on in industrial print and how that's going to grow in the future. Did you want to say any extra words about that, Marcus?
No, I think that is a very good synopsis there. But yeah, broken into 3 chunks, which we feel reflects the profile of the show and industrial print in general. And we're excited about it, and looking forward to it.
So we also have keynotes. We have Mark Hanley coming over from the US. His company, IT Strategies, monitor all the markets, and most of you will have met Mark on the previous webinars, if not at our events. We have Jason Oliver, who is Senior VP of Digital at Heidelberg. Heidelberg, of course, are known for commercial printing, but they're moving into what they call 4D printing in a big way. 4D printing is what Zara referred to as direct to shape. In Heidelberg's case, they're working with the German automotive industry to look at decorating cars. They've been working on sports products and a wide range of other things. We also have the local 3D printing company, VoxelJet. We have the CEO who's going to talk about what they're doing. They're particularly strong in German manufacturing industry, where they've been introducing their technology for not just prototyping, but for production as well. We've got 4 inkjet tech talks covering inks mainly, but also print quality and how to qualify inks for different print heads. So we hope a lot of the audience will be people looking to develop new products or processes within manufacturing industry, and this gives them some idea of some of the technical challenges and how to overcome them. We've got a wide range of companies exhibiting. All the exhibitors will be giving 15-minute presentations explaining what they can do, and this year we're particularly pleased to have 5 new companies over here at our show who are going to obviously introduce their products. I've seen some of the presentations that we're already getting, and there's some really interesting new things that are going to be announced at the event. And I also know that there are 1 or 2 of the exhibitors who are watching this and who haven't sent their presentations in yet. So you know who you are. If you could get me something by early next week, I'd appreciate it. We've got a lot of delegates already signed up, and delegates are coming in thick and fast. So do sign up for it if you're not already. We start off the week Monday and Tuesday. We have 3 courses running, and then the supplier showcase runs the Wednesday and Thursday. As you can see there, we're finishing up on the Thursday with we've called it a field trip, so that people can get the event signed off. But basically, Adfos is sponsoring this. They're going to take us to their HQ, and they're going to show us the high-speed inkjet working and drying at 5-10 meters per second. And then they're very kindly taking us to a local brewery for a Bavarian evening. But none of that will appear on any invoices that we send out, so you won't get into trouble for coming to that. So we hope you can stay over. So we still have places for delegates. If you want more information, go to our website, imyeurope.com, follow the links, and you've got 2 intensive days here for only €595, or we have a discounted rate for students and academics as well. Okay, that's me done.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
I've got to remember how to pass it back, or do you
It's
take
okay,
it back?
I can take it back. It's not much more I've got to show. I guess the final kind of comments and conclusions, we've covered quite a bit: packaging, decor, and functional. And obviously, there's a lot of work being done. Some of stuff before the Chasm, stuff after. But if you were going to try and summarise what is the future of industrial print with digital and inkjet, the indicators look very strong, but is there any one clear area where you think there's going to be another ceramics or textile, or what, Any comments there, gentlemen? I don't know who'd like to start wrapping up.
But the ceramics example was very interesting and quite remarkable, because those of us involved at the technology end were for many years wondering if we'd ever see the complex pigments that the industry uses actually be in inkjet printers and working reliably. But to some extent, it's quite a tight industry. It's in clusters in certain parts of the world, and as with many things in life, if you see your neighbour doing something or they've got something new, then you get involved as well. So once one company in Valencia got into inkjet ceramic tile printing, they all had to get into it. So that cluster effect does happen with some of the other applications for industrial inkjet, and we may see that effect happening.
So so what you're saying is it's tightly knit, locale, changed quickly. I think Mark has mentioned to me before, Mike, you said something along the lines of it, post-recessionary, it was actually an economic driver as well. Is that right? Mark Ritchie's gone now. Okay. So that was an unusual little kind of, well, quite significant case study. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
It was, in a sense, a thought of, oh, okay, so we're not selling anything like as much as we used to, and suddenly people realised that having huge inventories lying around was a massive liability. For some reason, they hadn't noticed that before. I think that was maybe the trigger that which suddenly made people wake up to the costs that were built into their way of producing things, and that this technology, which, as we said, had been around for a few years potentially, but that had some issues, was worth a try, and that was what kind of kicked it off.
And then I put down wood decor as being something that may happen, but maybe not to the same level, but maybe it's more of a mini revolution as opposed to a wholesale one, like the ceramics, for instance.
Well, in terms of the volume, it has the potential to be just as big as ceramics, if not bigger.
Does it? And okay, so that could be packaging. We have mentioned direct to shape, but obviously there's flexible and there's corrugated, all of which.
Marcus, if you're putting up slides, I don't have them at the moment.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't have them either, but.
Oh, you don't have them?
Yeah, packaging again is an area where, in some cases, I think perhaps the technology isn't quite ready to do flexible with the speeds and quality that people want. That may be not quite there. The direct to shape, there are some very interesting machines out there now doing direct to shape, which are quite fantastic. So I think that one's one that we'll see growth, albeit from a small start where we are at the moment.
Yeah, and packaging, I think, if you're honest, flexible and corrugated are in front, aren't they, in terms of adoption?
Yeah, probably. It's a shame Paul's not here still to contribute to this, but yeah,
you think of things like the Coke campaign, that was.
The reason for that is flexible and corrugated are printing onto linear.
Something else first.
Linear surfaces, and the handling is fairly straightforward. We've been watching a lot of patents emerging from a wide range of companies for printing onto direct to shape, where to get productivity you need to handle the objects, present them to an inkjet print head, rotate them, and so forth. And that's not quite as straightforward.
Yeah. Functional, it's a matter of time, but it's about developing the science, really, isn't it? And the challenges involved are considerable, but it, as Mark said, probably, I don't know if you agree with this, just to finish on, it is definitely happening, but digital technology is definitely a tandem technology, isn't it, in industry?
Well, I think using the word functional is a classic technology push, because each of the applications that we've talked about are potentially interested in decorating products, but also in applying textures, functionality of other types into those. So really that comes as a subset of the other applications. So things like textiles, things like decor, things like packaging. Functional print as well as decorative print is a part of that. So you need to consider that as part of those applications rather than as a technology itself. Otherwise, it's just too diverse.
Okay. Cool. Is there any final statements, guys, before we log off? Because we've been here for an hour and a half now.
No, that's it from me.
Okay, that's all from us. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for everyone that's still here, and I have recorded it. We had some technical problems, which probably made it a little longer than we'd hoped, but thank you very much, gentlemen. You're excellent, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully on the 24th of June in Munich. And that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Cheers.